Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive critical eye.
That's right. And to avoid lazy negativity, we decided to make this episode somewhat of a drinking game.
Somewhat.
So anytime we say anything negative about this film, about each other, you're going to hear this sound.
Your mother's a whore, Trebek.
That would be negative. So we would get buzzed and we would have to take a drink. And we hope you drink along with us.
By myself?
By yourself. So, pour yourselves a glass. We're going to dial back the clock and realize just how much weird shit we invented in the 80s.
Cheers.
Yeah, fuck yeah, dude.
Do you think when they were, I mean, this is, so it's obviously 1984. They have the whole montage at the beginning of this that we'll talk about in a second. We're talking about Air, people, of course. But do you think when they said, oh, this story took place in the 80s, and you think of the whole resurgence, not just Stranger Things and not just all of the artists that have circled, do you think they were like, fuck yes, this is the perfect time? John with the masters. This is audio.
We're missing it.
We're not. It's over. You guys were listening.
I missed it, dude.
Anyway, yes.
I'm listening to you. Goddamn.
Fucking period piece set in the 80s. They were probably thrilled when they were like, oh my God, 19. I'm sure some awesome stuff happened in the 80s that were perfect for the movie.
Yeah.
All right, that's our setup. We're talking about Air today. Can't wait. John, do we have any sponsors you want to shout out?
Yeah, we got a couple. Dasein is the music man. He writes the music for all the music you hear on this episode and every single episode. That's Dasein, T-A-S-E-I-N. You can find links to their music in our show notes. You can also find their music on every single music platform. Go hit it up, download it, enjoy yourself. We also have a beer sponsor who still makes beer, and his name is Carlos Barroso. Perhaps you've heard of him on this podcast.
Yeah.
You can find that guy making beer, all those beer making shenanigans. Instagram handle is cbarroso.beer. Link in the show notes. Follow him for some fun beer stuff. That's it.
Was your guys' theater packed for this movie?
Oh, yeah.
I had a good sized theater. Yeah, for sure. It was mostly full. I would say like 90%.
Yeah, same. We also had it was during the rainstorm. So during this Jason Bateman scene that comes up later in the movie, I don't know what it's supposed to be, tender, I guess. This weird like leak started happening and the whole movie theater. It was very strange. But
your movie theater
in
leaked?
AMC?
Yeah, but it was like in the corner. Also, guys,
Times Square?
No, Dave, do you have anything to say about AMC Times Square this week?
Give me a minute.
No, it was Lincoln Square, and everybody was looking. And then when people started going over there, and I don't know, guys, it's when people in movie theaters, when you have like lone people like walking around in the movie theater, it's like nerve wracking nowadays.
Yeah,
in 2023.
yeah, it's like I'm checking.
So we're like, what is going on?
Yeah, of course,
but what is going? It was very, very strange. But then by the time we realized it was just a leak, everybody started applauding. If I didn't have A-list, I would have tried to get a free movie ticket out of it. But anyway, moral of the story is this movie was packed. People are excited about this movie. Ben and Matt have started Artist Equity, which is meant to be like Blumhouse and give actors equity in the movies and let people share in the success of this.
And more than, just all the department heads, basically, and a little bit of a waterfall trickle down to people below the department head line. I've heard them try to break down this business plan for a while, but basically anyone who doesn't understand, generally speaking, people above the line, so that is actors, director, writer, producer. Typically, they were the only ones who in traditional contracts and their writers would get some kind of post-equity if the movie profited. So that's back-end stuff.
And only some actors and only like a lot of times SAG would let them have crumbs, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not every actor. It was just your top, people on the call sheet and everything. So now they have this new business plan that it's kind of convoluted and hard to understand. But the core principle behind it is that they want to give more of that money on the back end back to people who were in core department roles to help bring that, help bring the production to light. And there's also something I don't quite understand about how they pay people in production. But isn't it great? Yeah, what a good first movie.
Because you know what's really funny. I know we're gonna actually talk about this movie spoiler free for a few minutes if you are new to our podcast, but we're very excited to talk about this movie, so we're getting into it a little bit. When Viola Davis has a monologue, I was thinking they better have given her fucking points on this movie.
Absolutely, dude. I think
for the
anyone who hasn't listened to Ben Affleck's Smart List, he talks about it a little bit more in depth. But
they've been on the trail for this.
Yeah. I mean, this is a kind of a big venture, and it is interesting, and I think it's hopefully going to set a new precedent. And there's also something that's brand new that I think we should point out about the release of this movie. when Amazon bought the distribution rights, they also eventually, it wasn't a part of the original pitch apparently, but they eventually announced, working with Skydance Media, that they were going to try to go for a much longer extended theatrical run before putting it on their streaming platform.
Smart.
And so there's a whole bunch of firsts that are happening with this film, which is really cool and exciting. So they're kind of using it as a guinea pig.
Do you think that's because
this is the kind of movie?
Isn't the Academy changing the rules as well for Best Picture?
They are doing that. It is going to be extended, but this is way long. Their original window is much longer. The contracted window is much longer. Yeah, no, they want to go for it. And the reason they want to go for it is because, and I think you guys, just from what we were just already kind of chit-chatting about this, their marketing campaign is insane. So I'm not saying they weren't trying to have a great opening weekend, but I think they spec'd their opening weekend predictions for 16 million. Because they're banking on a much lower percentage drop of attendance over the next like 3 to 8 weeks, because they are calling this movie like a word of mouth movie. Yeah. We've seen posters for it, we've seen trailers, but I think this is the movie that's going to have people like talking about it. Go see this. Fucking story.
Well, it's
I
funny.
was in a furniture store after this screening yesterday. This very old man went and saw this movie. He was sitting in front of me, so it was just one of those random things where I kept seeing this guy in public. He walked up to this dude wearing a Bulls jersey who had like headphones on, like a young guy at this furniture store was just waiting for his girlfriend or whatever to shop. And he like tapped the guy on the shoulder, and I watched this entire encounter. And he was like, "Excuse me, young man, have you seen the movie Air?" And he was like, "Nah." He was like, "It's a revelation. You're going to love it. You must go see it. If you're a big Jordan fan, if you're a fan of the Bulls, you must go see it. It's just across the way at the movie theater." Like I literally watched what these guys were hoping would happen. Yeah. So I'm very curious to see what they do, because this could change everything for how the streamers release movies into theaters, which is kind of our whole mission with this podcast, right? Yep. Go see movies in the theaters.
And so this is the first movie since Late Night in 2019 that's an Amazon exclusive, but it's exclusively in theaters, but it's an Amazon production. Because it's that joint production. It's not exactly an Amazon production, as John just laid out. It technically lost the box office to the Super Mario Brothers because it only made $20 million domestically, but this is an international film. And so it's doing well international. It has a very big budget, but it's going to make it back. I believe it's $90 million budget. I imagine a lot of that goes to the talent. You know, in this, I don't know any set pieces that would have been particularly expensive.
I mean, definitely not their fault. Super Mario Brothers went nuts this weekend, so...
And Super Mario Brothers made like 30,
even then, in the wake of Super Mario Brothers going nuts, I was in a theater on a Saturday afternoon, and my theater was at least 3/4 full.
And you just know that there are a lot of parents, because remember how this used to happen, you guys? Like we would look at our paper or whatever to go see a movie, and there were parents who took their children to see Super Mario, and they saw posters and signs for Air when they were there, and they were like, "Let's come back next weekend and see that." Like, this
I think the drop on this one's not going to be as big as a normal film.
I think this will linger. I think, and it was Easter, so I was with my family, and I was gushing. Sorry to give away the game for me, but I told them I have a feeling they're going to go see it next weekend. I was wrong about Mario. Mario made $140 million over 5 days in America, so that's going to do fine. But we're talking about Air.
Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
I'll be talking about Super Mario Brothers on the Matt and Mark Movie Show tomorrow, though. We just recorded a Reefer Madness podcast on Life is But a Song, a podcast dedicated to movie musicals and their love. Reefer Madness we talked about, and that is going to drop on 4/20. So go ahead and subscribe to them so you know what's coming out. I'm getting through the business because honestly, guys, I kind of feel like we should skip the gripes and get right to this movie. I feel like we're already talking about it.
I would, except I can't.
Well, Dave, let's let
AMC Times Square.
I can't.
AMC Times Square, but it's relevant to this movie. So Dave, for everybody, just to catch you up. Also, again, if you're new, we're going to talk about what we've seen and what you've been watching at the end. So please stick to the end to see what we've been watching. All right. Dave's going to have a gripe about AMC Times Square, which he keeps going to.
It doesn't count the title. So, yes, I went to AMC Times Square. Again. All right. I'm talking to exhibitors in general in this. You were warned to get your shit together. Now, over the past, I want to say 6 weeks, around about Cocaine Bear, because I saw Cocaine Bear at AMC, and then I went and saw Cocaine Bear at Regal, and the sound at Regal was so low, anytime anyone laughed, you couldn't hear the dialogue afterwards, and they weren't laughing loud. And it's like, you've got to get it together. If you want people to come back to the movies, which these movies are now drawing them, if you want to come back more than once, you got to up your game, because none of this crap happens in my living room, but a lot of the movies do. So, like, people are going to go to AMC and they're going to get a projector not starting with a mouse pointer on the bloody screen, broken chairs. I walked into, my chair for this movie was broken. And people were sitting next to me, so I couldn't move. But, like, and then when I came in and sat down, the pre-show started finally, like, for this one, because it was at a little theater, but the bloody work lights have been left on. So I went over, but, like, get it together.
It matters, right?
Yeah, it really, the experience matters, and you're ruining it.
Did you fill out?
You're ruining it.
Did you fill out the customer? Did you fill out the customer service thing that you sent us? They got an email that said, "How was your experience?"
Yeah, just so everybody knows, I got an email from AMC going, "Hey, you came to AMC. Tell us about your experience. Tune in for how fucking funny that's going to get."
Dude, I didn't even mention this to you guys, notes. But when we saw, God, what movie were we doing a few weeks ago? It was a giant movie before John Wick. It was a big movie. And we all sat down and the trailers started rolling. It was Shazam, thank you. And the trailers started rolling and we were all like, the sound is out of sync. I could tell I was in an industry crowd. We were like, and there were some sound people around me and we all started kind of chat. We were like, they just should we go tell them? Like, I know what we need to do to fix this. Like, and eventually the people came in and they fixed it. But they had to start some of the trailers over. It took them like several minutes of like watching the Indiana Jones trailer like 3 times and trying to line it up, which didn't make sense to me, first of all, for how DC files are exported and exhibited. But it just reminded you that like we all paid a lot of money. I don't know how a mistake like that slips through the cracks. Yes, there are humans that are running these things, and we don't want to forget that. These are humans and we respect them. But like that is the kind of thing like we just can't give an inch to people who are cynical about the movie-going experience right now. We need to make it perfect for them.
It only takes one bad screening, and that person will never come back again.
We're also talking to you, you fucking talking assholes. You talk throughout the entire fucking movies. Yeah. We know you're there regardless, so the theaters have to be perfect, because those assholes are coming to watch movies whether we like it or not. The theater experience has to be perfect.
This is for the assholes.
We'll
drink on your behalf.
Anyway.
This movie's great.
Like, seriously, just
thank you, Dave.
Come on, pick up your axe. We want people to go and see these films.
I want to say this too, because I know this is going to be on Amazon soon, because people are going to think about this. But when a movie works, and I'm gonna spoil. I haven't asked you all what you thought of the movie. This is usually our initial takeaways. What you think? What you feel about the movie? But we're already into this. This is up my fucking alley. I mean, sports and acting and entertainment, I love Ben and Matt and them, their whole story, the ups and downs. I love the whole. This movie is exactly made for me. This movie works, and yes, you can watch this at home, but it's just better when you see it with other people. It doesn't need a large format. It doesn't need a John Wick format or a Shazam format. But if you go to the movie theater, and movie theaters are turning into theme parks, we all know that. That's why we always go to IMAX or Dolby, because we have the A-list. It's free for us. So we might as well see it in the best format. I saw something in 3D recently, because why not? It's the same price. It's not like a family of 4. If you go to 3D with popcorn, it costs $150, and there's like, half your take-home like expenditures of the week. This movie it's just fun to be in public. And we all saw The Last Dance. And if you haven't seen The Last Dance, you at least knew that it happened during COVID and it was a big moment. The Michael Jordan documentary that ESPN did, or that he sold to ESPN. This movie could be the Top Gun for the not small movies, because this obviously is huge clout given the people involved in it, and given the Nike of it, and there's a lot of this that's very high
character piece, But
it's a small little nothing. If you take the subject matter out of the movie,
let's say intimate, not small.
If you take the subject matter out, which might seem ridiculous because form follows function, yada yada yada, but theoretically, this movie is similar to a lot of other movies based on a true story, some creative licenses, mostly real characters, conversations that happened in real life. Obviously, star actors playing real life people that you may not know. At the end of the movie, there's going to be a little scroll that tells you the truth and some facts about these people that hopefully gives a reaction, right? These movies. But when it works and you see it in a group, you remember it. You remember it for a long time. It matters more. And I just feel like that's my initial takeaway. I didn't mean to set this up this way, but my initial takeaway was, thank God I saw this in a group.
How did the movie make you feel?
I fucking love this movie. Next.
Dude, I couldn't agree more. I feel like I heard audible, there are certain like really tangible things, like how many audible reactions do you hear around you, and how does that make you feel? I got the good, positive, like laughing, certain songs. Oh yeah, some people are like, oh, that's fucking great. I heard some tears in some more tender moments, or people sniffling a little bit when they were, that scene that you referenced with Jason. I thought that was a really well written scene.
I missed some of it, and I'm so sorry. I'm gonna see it again, I promise.
You went and peed during that part?
No, this is when there was the leak in my theater and everybody was looking around what's going on?
We'll talk about that for sure. But kind of what I was going about with that word
Bateman's
of mouth thing,
emoting, and it just drip.
But I'm sorry, when that shit happens, and then I see an individual person in a packed theater opening weekend. I was in Denver seeing The Dark Knight Rises at a different theater that Aurora weekend. So you don't every single time this thing, not to mention that now, but every time this happens, I have a lot of conflicting things going on.
No, I'm thinking about it when I feel you. I'm always like, where am I going to dive? How am I going to get out?
It only has to happen once to make people nervous.
Fucking Tennessee. There's my gripe. Tennessee. Fucking Tennessee.
This is the...
Amen.
So I'll give my feedback on this movie, I guess. I thought it was... this is exciting. I have a little inside baseball on this just because I am super lucky to know some of the people who worked on this movie. And this is kind of one of the first, this is the first venture that Skydance Sports is going out on.
I couldn't believe I saw that at the top, by the way. It said Skydance Sports as a sponsor. I've never seen a sports enterprise like this. And I'm glad that it was Skydance out of all the companies.
So the crew over there, and I'm not going to pretend to understand it all, but the crew over there has purchased a very large amount of sports broadcasting. I'm talking about live sporting events that aren't usually broadcast as widely to America or across Europe. I'm talking about soccer, some other sports. They're going to be doing that. But in doing that, they also said to themselves, how can we market this in a different way? Part of their idea was to make movies about sports. So this is their very first venture of using a sports story that is very familiar and relatable, that is well told with actors you've heard of, to try to make it. Yeah. So I just thought that this was really exciting, that they were able to put something out that every fucking human being on planet Earth knows who Michael Jordan is, but it's not about Michael Jordan. But, it's fun that this ended up being a subverted angle on kind of the business of it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later, because I like that.
Yeah, just to call out in a very good way, Alex Convery, the screenwriter, had a cool IndieWire article that came out a few days ago. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was kind of him just talking about, he's had a bunch of scripts on the blacklist. This is the first one he's ever really gotten produced in a big way. And he was just kind of talking a little bit about that origin. But then also somebody asked him just a very pointed question. How do you feel about sports movies? You're obviously a huge sports fan. He's around our, 30s age. So he grew up in Chicago watching the Bulls and stuff. And he just had this wonderful comment about how he said something along the lines of, I like sports movies, but there's always a part of really popular sports movies that might be a little too Disney-fied, like the emotional manipulation of them. We all love Remember the Titans, but that kind of thing can feel like sports movies have to feel like that. So he was interested in, like, what if I write a sports movie that's not really about the sport, and it's about facilitating the sport? And I think it ended up yielding a character piece. We weren't waiting for them to get on the court. We were waiting for them to facilitate something that would end up being, one of the largest cultural impacts in the history of man fucking kind. And it was really cool kind of getting behind the scenes. I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was really successful in a lot of ways. And I'm not a huge sports fan. This is not for me necessarily. I'm like another human who knows Michael Jordan, but I was thinking about Jeff. I was thinking about my friends who are huge sports guys. I know they're going to like it. But I liked it too. Elizabeth did too. We really enjoyed it. So I feel like this isn't just for people who feel like they know all the ins and outs of the Bulls in the 90s with Michael Jordan. So I thought it was great.
Yeah. Nice. I will say I have 2 movies lifetime that are sports movies that I actually enjoyed.
Raging Bull.
Nope.
Rocky.
But just to give you an idea of how this is going.
For not liking Raging Bull. I didn't hit the gush. I didn't hit that.
I hit the gush.
He hit it.
Oh, okay.
Tell us, dude. What are the other 2 though? Before you set it up.
No, I'll get to it. But I fucking love this. I have no idea. Had no idea what to expect. I just sat down. I let this wash over me. Everyone else in the audience had a great time with me. I left the theater thoroughly entertained and just a little bit inspired as well. And the fact that I argued for this movie over doing Super Mario Brothers. shows some personal growth for me as
You
well.
argued
I
for
must
it
say.
because I said I had to watch Super Mario's for a different podcast, and I thought you guys would be nice to me and let me not have to watch another movie. I knew I was going to see Air, though.
Yeah,
But I knew I was going to see Air.
I'm so glad I was a dick. This was not only entertaining.
I knew I was going to see Air.
I'll tell you, this is not only entertaining, but as someone who recently left full-time employment to like chase their dreams,
Congratulations, Dave.
it's like reassuring and inspiring that sometimes the risk pays off. I could not have seen this at a better time. This movie spoke to me. So like this is probably my top favorite sports movie that I've ever seen.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Now, followed by Major League and Invictus, all three of them true stories.
Invictus was one. We
nice.
talked about Invictus. Go through our feed, people. We talked about Invictus.
We did talk about Invictus.
Major League, we did
I
it.
mean, just put Matt Damon in sports movies. He loves it.
God, he's so good.
Guys.
I can't wait to talk about the work.
Guys, Major League is one of the best sports movies of all time.
It really is.
And do you know why? Well, why?
Oh, wait, I forgot Beer Fest. Beer Fest is my other favorite. Four favorite sports movies.
Major League is because
Dodgeball.
Oh, God,
dodge,
now
duck, dip,
it's five.
dive, and
That's five.
dodge.
Usually you pay extra for that carton.
Dave.
And Bateman's in that.
Yes, he is the best. Oh my God,
You're
right,
not
dude.
wrong, Cotton. That's 2 weeks in a row, I think, that I use that joke. That's why John's it's literally the exact same. Major League's the best movie because of the characters. The characters are all so good and so specific and so ridiculous.
Also, it's an underdog story, and that's what this is as well. It's an underdog story. I feel like a lot of people, like I think my theater was mostly packed because people were thinking they were getting a Michael Jordan movie. And it's not. It's about the stuff that happened around him and the creation of it and how it was managed. And that really works for this film. It works so well for this film.
So I want to segue. This is not a spoiler because this is very well advertised. This is going to be a more open conversation than we usually have. So as far as Dave usually has a spoiler button for spoilers, I don't know when you're going to hit it, but I'm going to ask right away. Wasn't it such a good choice to not see Michael Jordan? Wasn't that the best choice?
That's not a spoiler at all. Like, you should know. Yeah, that falls into it. Yeah, you don't see his face.
Well, you hear his voice, and it's clearly
voice.
actual Michael's voice that they made sound younger or something. But they have an actor, but you never see his face.
Mm-hmm.
That
was an amazing choice. I was like, are they just not going to show him the whole way through? And they didn't. And I was like, this is brilliant. Like,
isn't it great?
This is the best thing I've seen Ben Affleck direct.
Oh, dude, that's wonderful. I think, Jeff, I know what you're talking about, and I feel like there's this idea of the facilitators. Like, this is a movie on its face. They do it in the production. It's in the screenplay, as far as I understand. They obviously used it as a device. I keep reflecting on this movie as this is a movie about getting back to your principles. They keep showing those principles of Philip Knight's founding of Nike, and it's this wonderful picture on the wall. I don't know if that's true, but it was a wonderful set piece, and it was great. The way they used it.
This is one of those movies where it's true.
Probably, right? I think that this is also based on this is a lot of this information was taken away. Alex Convery, the screenwriter, read the book by Sonny Vaccaro on this part of his life.
Matt Damon plays Sonny Vaccaro in the movie, who was one of the early employees of Nike who helped build the basketball program and essentially bet it all on Michael Jordan.
It's just one of those great examples, which is, Dave, I know you're talking about with like inspiration. Again, in most sports, there's such a wonderful example of it, but we've seen like behind the scenes, like backstage movies. There are things that are more obvious where we see the performance professions like sports, like entertainment, where you see people, it's baked into the sport or what they're doing to take risks and to try to push yourself really hard. This is totally framed from the business perspective. And I just loved that for the first half of the movie, or at least the first half, at least up to the midpoint, there's a cynicism almost about, and a kind of a, maybe not a cynicism, but the way that they perceive those principles that they keep coming back to. Sonny Vaccaro, Matt Damon's character, is like, but we're not living by them anymore. And the fact that he did take this huge risk to try to say, you know what, it's all thing. This is the point. yeah, this is the point for us to take these kinds of risks. That's how companies like this became great anyway. And just to know, because we all know, just how you don't show Michael Jordan, we also, you know, they're playing on this fact that everyone knows what happened after they took this giant risk. The whole point of this kind of business at this kind of level is not to play it safe all the time. Like, you're not going to excite anyone or inspire anyone. And what a perfect example of using like the #1 basketball player to do that. He did not want to sign with them. That was fucking awesome. What a wonderful obstacle.
Yeah. I mean, there's two things that fall into that. And it's like it is a sports movie in the essence that sports is an element of it, but Nike is the underdog. Like, they're the underdog team that has to win. So they use the same like sports analogy, but applied it to a company instead. And we all know how it, like, everybody knows how it came out. Like, you learned a couple of things that you didn't know during this movie, but everybody knows how the deal went down.
Did he sign with Nike?
But when they're waiting for that phone call, you're on the edge of your seat. Like, you know how it comes out, but you're still like on the edge of your fucking seat waiting.
This is the hardest thing. Thing to pull off.
That is superior filmmaking.
The hardest thing to pull off in movies, I think, in sports movies specifically, when you know the outcome of the quote unquote, like when you know the quote unquote results, but the story is so compelling. In this case, the word that I was using was frustrating. I was frustrated that it wasn't easier. You know what I mean? I was frustrated. Like, during this movie, I was sitting there and I was like, why can't this be easier? Why is this such an obstacle to get him to sign with Nike? He so clearly should be with them, right? But also when you're dealing with these sports movies and you don't know, I just lost my point. I lost it. What was I talking about?
Let me throw a little shower principle at you. Let me distract you for a second. Did you guys watch, Jeff? You definitely did the Lakers series that we love so much.
I was going to come back to that in a second. Yeah.
So there's that one throwaway, and I couldn't remember. Maybe you'll remember. Is that Sonny Vaccaro or Philip Knight that approaches Magic?
This is something they don't mention in the movie. So I didn't do my usual setup, but Ben Affleck directed this movie. So this is a Ben Affleck, Matt Damon co-pro. Some people are going into this thinking they wrote this. They did not write this the way that they wrote Good Will Hunting. Alex Convery, as John said, adapted the book by Sonny Vaccaro, who Matt Damon plays. They produced this movie, and they decided to let the artists do their own. They spread the wealth a little bit, and they built a team, essentially, almost like a franchise. So Ben Affleck directed this, and he chose to play Phil Knight. Now, in Winning Time, which is based on the book Showtime, based on the Showtime Lakers of 1979, but because it was on HBO, which competed with Showtime, I'm going to talk slower because I know we're in a podcast. HBO show Winning Time is based on the book Showtime, about the Showtime Lakers of 1979 plus, when Jerry Buss bought the team. So you had Magic Johnson in the draft playing against Larry Bird of the Celtics, yada, 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 yada. Phil Knight, this is true, in the 70s, he created Nike, I believe in 1971, as a running shoe company with Steve Prefontaine, if you know that story, in Oregon. Steve Prefontaine, well, if you like the Billy Crudup version, you could also get the Jared Leto version, but it's up to you.
That's true.
You also have Donald Sutherland, let's not forget. But anyway, I also like the Billy Crudup version better. But Phil Knight basically created the running shoe, and it all came on the premise of lighter is better, because if you're going to take 20,000 steps, the lighter shoe will have less wear and tear. And so that's sort of like the premise. And then Nike became the best running and walking shoe of the time. My dad had Nikes in the 70s. Most college kids walked around in Nikes, according to my dad, who was a runner in the 70s, but they had no other sports, no baseball, no basketball, no soccer. All of these things came post Jordan, which we will get to, because I really want to talk about that as a legacy of this movie, specifically this story. Phil Knight approached Magic Johnson, and they did not mention this in this movie, but he offered Magic Johnson a profit share and said, I will create a basketball department around you. Trust me. And he wasn't ready yet. And in hindsight, we can say Phil Knight, who is played by Ben Affleck in this movie, was not ready to have the biggest athlete perhaps in the world say, okay, create a business around me, out of the trunk of your car. So Magic Johnson passed. If Magic Johnson said yes, Magic Johnson would have $5 billion worth of Nike wealth, even more than Michael Jordan, because Nike was smaller at the time. That's true. And that is mentioned in Winning Time. That's not in this movie, but honestly, it doesn't matter. I almost feel bad for mentioning it out loud, but this is where Nike was. Nike wasn't ready yet. That's where we were at. Nike wasn't ready yet, but they knew they needed to make a move.
Also talking about...
Should we turn on spoilers just in case?
Yeah, let's turn on spoilers. Let's turn on spoilers.
So spoilers just in case. I mean, it's hard to spoil anything in this movie, but yeah.
Y'all have heard let me just pose this question to you guys. I'm reading that book that's written by the CEO of Pixar on just their company's history and everything. And I've read a few like entrepreneurial books over the past couple of years now, and just talking about, a lot of them keep referring over and over and over again to how important the culture and principles are on your business and how that should impact everything about how you hire and how everybody acts within it. And I guess I just wanted to ask you, like, just going off of what you were just talking about, isn't it cool to see something presented that just shows you that Philip Knight, as portrayed in this movie by Ben Affleck, directed by Ben Affleck, we thought that maybe there was a chance that he was not going to be ready to do what you said, even though maybe historically he had already had that idea. And I just love that over and over and over again, there was somebody who was working for him, who he allowed to have Philip Knight allowed to have a culture where somebody could push against maybe the norms or whatever the conforming that was happening over time, because they were finding so much success with the running industry, that allowed that to be subverted again, to bring them back to a place of, how do we get back to that same ideal that allowed us to take such risks that got us here in the first place without all the flash?
Yeah.
Did you guys get that? Like every scene, I feel like there was kind of an example of that.
I mean, they came up together. They like he knew about selling shoes out of the back of the van. Like he advised him not to go public. So those two like had a bond.
And Matt Damon currently
not to go public. That was
Matt Damon, metaphorically worked out of his van. That's what Matt Damon's character was. We all know this. We all know people, or at least we know the anecdotes of people our age or younger that booked the big job, and then it's like their friends aren't necessarily behind. They just didn't get the big job, so they're behind financially. But
this happens all the time. Like famously, U2, when they did the Zooropa tour and they had all the massive screens, they did this massive worldwide tour. And there's a famous anecdote about the Edge and Bono sitting in the dressing room, and they've looked at each other and just gone, "How do we get back from here?" They wanted to take it back to the simple stuff. And
God, that's good.
Yeah, I feel like everybody goes through that when they get to that point. It's
I just read about this with Radiohead.
You lose something in the transition sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, after was it the Benz? What was the first album was Pablo Honey. They were like, "Well, what do you do next?" And they were like, "The opposite." They're like, "How do you respond to this?" And they say, "I hope we don't."
There's this scene in the movie. We're in our spoiler section where after Ben Affleck's character says, "Let's fucking do it. Let's close the deal. Let's go for it." And I love the sense. I do like how Ben played it, where he wasn't like nervous, but he kept saying a line similar to "fuck it, let's do it," where you could tell there was a little resistance, but he was like, "I know this is the right thing to do, but I'm scared." Yeah,
in the back of his mind, he's like, "I have to answer the board for this."
And I'm glad they did that.
I seriously thought they fired him at one point.
And there were two great moments around that anxious.
Because I don't know this story. I don't know this story at all.
I don't know it either. I love the scene before. I could have used a little bit more footage of it, but I still was really moved by it, where you saw him. It was funny and moving. He's running. Matt Damon says, "How did you reach your conclusion? How did you decide to let me take a chance on this?" And he says, "I went for a run." Yeah. Fucking asshole. That's what my whole company's like. You can achieve all these things by being in that mindset. But then also when Matt Damon walks in towards the end and Ben Affleck is on the couch doing his forgiveness meditation rest thing and acknowledging fully that, like, I may have just made a huge mistake, or I may have made a choice that is going to be so life-changing for our business and culture and me personally that we may have just destroyed our entire company and the way that this business is structured. But I know we did something. I know we did something meaningful.
He communicated that very well in that scene.
Or even just maybe he was successful, but now it's different. And different isn't even successful, but different isn't necessarily
it sounds like the Amazon delivery guys having some trouble outside John's house.
Did you hear my dog? Yes. Just started. Sorry.
So you know what I hear? So there's so much to talk about with this movie, but let's start with Matt and Ben. But if anybody out there is like, well, what about Viola Davis? We're gonna get to Viola Davis. We're gonna get to all of the other things.
I'm gonna come in swinging for Viola Davis.
Promises for sure on this one. But let's start with them. And if you believe that the better story is Michael Jordan's mom, then we'll talk. Yeah, we're gonna try to cover it all. But I love how meta this movie is, and that isn't the most important thing in this movie, but I love how Ben Affleck underplayed Phil Knight. Exactly what you're saying, John. And you know what I understand? You know what's really funny too? And again, sometimes when a movie just works, the unintended consequences work. So I think I would love to see the movie, like, this is going to be weird, but with the OJ, there were like 10 different OJ things that came out at the same time. You had the Ryan Murphy, you had the documentary, you had all these other different versions. I know that's a weird parallel to draw here, but in this case, I want a full episode in Wilmington, North Carolina, not just 3 minutes. I want a 60-minute, I want the whole thing. But Ben Affleck underplayed this so well. Yeah. That even though Matt Damon's character of Sonny Vaccaro, the author of the book, the star of this film, he's the gambler. They sort of went away from that, but he's the gambler in this. Very obviously.
I mean, they touched on it, and that was just to put it in context, I think. It was perfect. Yeah.
We could have done more gambling. I'm glad we didn't. That was it. When Ben Affleck, he sweats over whether or not to give Michael Jordan $250,000. And then when he finally says, okay, fine, give him the $250. Do the presentation, do it. He said yes. Okay, he'll only do it with the points. Okay, fine. And then all of a sudden, like that, he gave away a percentage that could be worth billions of dollars. That is something that a gambler understands really well, is when you're already pot committed, as it's known. It's like, fuck it, just do whatever just fucking get it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, he underplays it to the point where actually, like, the gambling addiction that Matt Damon has, I, as the audience member, related to that now with Ben Affleck's character. So all of these, like, every single thing about this movie has like a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it's not because you watch this and it's Godfather Part 2. It's just because all of the things work, and it means something to everybody in a different way.
It works. And you said it earlier, but I don't think we can overstate this enough. This is not a sprawling epic. No. It is a small character piece. There are just a handful of players in this, and it's really just talking scenes between them, talking about business and a little bit about life, but mostly just about life and about business, and trying to reach an agreement and trying to convince people to get something that you want from them, and just the relationships. A few of my favorite scenes in this movie are the phone calls between Matt Damon's character and Chris Messina as David Falk, Jordan's sports agent.
Chris Messina, yeah.
Those could have been so cliche. Yeah. And it just the usual things that you would expect from an agent. They didn't avoid those cliches, because cliches tend to exist for a reason, but they allowed them to turn into something that was a little bit more inside baseball, like a little bit more like, how do these people actually talk to each other? And I don't know how much was lifted directly from Sonny Vaccaro's book, of course, but one of my favorite moments in this movie was the second big phone call after Matt Damon has gone to visit the Jordan family in Wilmington.
That was the biggest laugh in my theater. Was that the biggest laugh in your theater?
Yeah, I will eat your balls. I will eat your testicles. But it's the moment after that, actually, when Damon goes,
I will fuck the eye.
I don't know, man. We're two middle-aged men. We're out of shape. What are we yelling about here for? We want the same thing. I just love how, boom, it got grounded back into some kind of reality for character relationship, but also the financial reality of what they were actually trying to achieve. Why are we screaming at each other? Like, I get it. Let's just try to get to what we both want. An enormous amount of success for this player, and hopefully for the companies.
There was one guy in my theater got a little uncomfortable with the whole eating your balls discussion.
You mean, I will fuck the eye hole of your skull? Like, that line?
No, he started vocally protesting.
I love Matt Damon.
It's not going to do it. They're not going to show it. Come on.
I love Matt Damon laughing because so long in movies we needed to get people emotionally involved. So we would do anything. Look at every Robert De Niro movie is how do we get him angry, right? It's like, how do we get him angry? That's why the King of Comedy might be his best role, because it doesn't get angry. He just
doesn't happen.
Well, I mean, Matt Damon is the master at dropping those. It's like,
and he's laughing because he's like, why are you yelling at me? This is good for both of us if it works.
Like, we're just two middle-aged guys. When he walks back in and Invictus into the thing, it's like, I think he just asked us to win the World Cup.
They're both single.
He just says it.
Exactly. Exactly.
He's the master at understatement.
Let's just lean into it in general. Like you just said the word, but he is a a master of his craft at this point. I mean, we probably could have said that earlier on. He's only demonstrated great work throughout his entire career. But my God, he is so comfortable now. It gave me this role gave me the same vibes that I had a different kind of person who I think is super talented. It gave me that same vibe that I had of Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's just like that person is so fucking comfortable in front of a movie camera that they know exactly what to do technically. They know exactly who they are emotionally. I don't even feel like I was watching acting. Every time he was on screen, I felt like he was just alive.
Dave, go see it. You know what I thought?
You should see it.
This is going to be crazy, but fuck it. While we're at it, Tom Hanks was always known as the greatest thinking actor, where you always knew his thoughts and he always whatever. Matt Damon just makes the right choice.
Yeah.
Like I don't even, it's not like J.D. Lewis becomes a character, or Jack Nicholson is so invested in the character that he transforms that way. Matt Damon just always makes the right choice and just makes the easiest choice for him. It's easy. Like he makes it seem easy.
But also, they loaded the deck on this thing. You had Damon, fucking Jason Bateman. When does he ever suck?
Like I always think about her as Smart List when we talked about Smart List with the
Viola Davis. When she was okay, we're going to get to her now, but when she was on screen, did anyone else catch themselves like leaning forward, waiting for like whatever gold was about to come out?
And she underplayed it in the most brilliant way imaginable. And
it made you like, what are you going to say? Like,
I'm glad that you said underplayed, because a lesser actor would have read this script and they would have said, okay, because there were all these great lines about how
this is my chance.
Tucker's character, Matt Damon's character, they set it up as, oh, she's the boss. She makes the rules.
Yeah, that could have been totally bombastic, but it wasn't.
Absolutely. A lesser actor could have come in just swinging and chewing up the scenery and trying to make everybody feel like, oh, they're powerful. All of that came through her stillness, and those fucking feet dug way into the ground.
The stillness was everything. Yeah.
When Mr. Jordan has that wonderful, oh, here we go, you know, that line that's in the trailer, he wasn't really talking about, about Matt Damon and Nike. He was talking about like, son, you are in for a ride because you're about to meet my wife. And she not once did she raise her voice. Not once did I feel like she was out of control. And there was such a power there that seemed understated. I don't know. The understatedness
like
of it
when
was,
she's asking him questions, and he's like, "I'm going to tell you how this meeting's going to go. I'm going to tell you how this meeting's going to go." And when she was in those meetings, it happened, and it was just that quiet acceptance.
And of course, it happened.
She didn't telegraph it. It's like,
and she was
I knew how this was going to go,
wasn't she?
Yeah, but it was that quiet acceptance.
I loved how much they cut to her to create tension in the Nike meeting when she was looking at Michael, because she could tell he may not be on board with this, or something isn't working, or I'm not sure if he's, even after Matt Damon's crazy speech, when you're supposed to think they won him over, they cut to her again, and she was like, I'm still not sure if he's there yet. Like, I loved that they didn't let us think, like, she was like, I'm glad we came to this.
But that
and
speech,
also just a Viola.
That gave me goosebumps. Like, they telegraphed it. I knew it was coming a mile away, but it's still, what a fucking speech. That was great.
Okay. So this is kind of a perfect example of what I was saying earlier. Like, there are moments in this movie that have, in lesser hands, they could have seemed cheesy.
Yeah.
But they did such a good job for like that moment specifically. Matt Damon saying like, fuck the white classic rock band behind the music. None of this is working in the video. Let's turn it off. Up close, tight shot. Let me deliver this really meaningful monologue. But the way they set that scene up was so pedestrian. There were no fireworks or anything. It was people in a business meeting.
Pete came did he even enter the room? He just like appears there.
That one cutaway to Jason Bateman at the end as well.
Where he was just like, he gave it to him.
No, but for me, he used the line that he said. And
where he was like,
it was this,
who wears it.
And it was just like, you stopped my video, but all's forgiven. Like there was just there was so much goodness in that scene. Fuck.
Yeah.
Dave.
I agree.
I'm excited about this film, Viola, dude. Like I haven't seen anything like this in a long time.
And
that makes me happy.
And I love that Ben Affleck, who made a name for himself as a director with The Town, where he was like, I want to be different. I want to tell a story that I know. It's a heist movie. It's not that special in principle, but I'm setting it in Boston, and I'm going to tell it in a way that only somebody from Boston with my point of view and my skill set and my leverage can do. And it was, people saw that movie and went, holy shit, this person has a voice. That's what that movie was. Is, oh my God, Ben Affleck has a voice.
Yeah.
And he knows how to use it with his brain and his gut at the same time, not just his bravado from... Anyway, so the fact that he could do a commercial movie like this, that anybody could have made this movie. Anybody could have made this movie, but nobody would have made it as well as they made this.
Absolutely not.
We'll not to reference the Smart List too much, but they asked him directly about that. And obviously Jason Bateman was in the movie too. So, but he said, he made some comment, Ben Affleck made some comment like, yeah, Matt and I, it actually started with The Last Duel. But they basically kind of had a realization at some point recently, probably not a midlife crisis, but their midlife, what do we want to do for the rest of our lives? We can do whatever we want.
Also a reference in this movie.
For anyone who skipped our Last Duel episode, we love that too.
Last Duel, shout out. We actually really liked it. John wasn't there, but David, I loved it.
I wasn't there. But apparently they said to each other, let's just make movies with our friends. Let's just make movies with people we want to make movies with. Fun stories. Yeah. It doesn't have to be this other thing. Like, I bet we'll get to the other thing by doing this. And this is kind of exactly what they were hoping for. Let's just cast people we enjoy. Let's concentrate on a story that we think is fun. It doesn't have to be this sprawling American epic with the biggest budget in the world. And let's see what happens. Kind of like going back to their roots of the goodwill kind of aspect. And look what they've done. I think this movie is going to transcend... You said it great, dude. This might be like the smaller version of Top Gun, like for this year's summer. Like, this might be the movie that everybody ends up seeing. I mean, just because it's good
and just say, wait,
it doesn't need gigantic set pieces.
Felt like this when I walked out of a theater since Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Wow, dude, that's fucking beautiful. I'm gonna tell them you said that.
I want to.
They're so proud of it.
They should
the people
be.
who made this movie.
Yeah.
They're so proud of it, and I can tell like they're so giddy. This can you believe this is that guy, the screenwriter's first movie?
And then he just gets to be involved in this, and they get to sit there instead of saying like, well, "Let's just buy the movie and you can be on set."
Sometimes he's fucking good at what you do. It happens.
Yeah, I mean,
apparently
it's
Ben
great.
Affleck would leave.
I'm not going to spill too much tea here, but they're excited about what they can do with other movies like this in the sports genre, and they're working on some other things that are going to feel and be like this, like this kind of other perspective on sports movies. And just as somebody who again is not a real
look forward to having
sports
six
guy, I'm excited
movies
to watch them. Yeah, I'm excited to watch more of them because
maybe they'll sit
this
above
isn't really
Beer
my
Fest.
milieu.
All right, let's talk about two of my favorite actors on the planet. One of my favorite actors growing up. Truly, like seriously, like if I made a list of my favorite actors growing up, Chris Tucker is very high on that list. And they got him. And here's the thing about this movie, because you have Chris Tucker, you have Chris Messina, you have Jay Mohr. Of course, Viola Davis, we're dancing around it. Matthew Maher, who's that guy actor, and he has a speech impediment in this, which is brilliant. Marlon Wayans. Again, the Wayans brothers, I watched the Wayans brothers all the time growing up.
We're all going to be forgotten. When he repeats that,
it's brilliant.
That line is so funny.
I'll tell you what,
these are not shoo-ins, and this is not just them catering to their friends. This is, we believe in you. We can do this with us together. We can do this. And they cast these people, and apparently they let Chris Tucker ad lib, rewrite, etc., and not in a way that's like like taking our screenwriter and throwing him off to the side, but in a way that's like, let's make this as real as possible. Let's make it work. What can we do?
I'll tell you what, seeing Chris Tucker in this, it makes you wonder exactly how much coke he was on during The Fifth Element too.
Dave, get our buzz count up. We gotta get some buzzes.
It's always so moving when you see, like,
I'm sorry, that dude was stick thin in The Fifth Element, and like now you see him, he looks so good.
Come on, he's just getting older.
Yeah, I know, but like he looks so good now as well. Like,
and also just that it's always so moving when you see really comedic actors start taking on a little bit more.
I mean, a lot of the
serious stuff.
A lot of the comedians are some of the best dramatic actors. So.
Yeah,
because the best comedians
they're all in pain on the inside.
Yeah.
Oh, man, come on.
John, for
dude, sure. They're all in so. Who hurt you, Lionel?
Daddy wasn't there.
I thought, Jeff, unfortunately you missed it, sounds like, but I am going to give this up to the screenwriter and Mr. Jason Bateman.
I knew it too. I knew it.
I didn't see this moment coming. It's just such an interesting screenwriting device to try to call out the consequences of Matt Damon chasing this ideal, trying to get back to these, we got to take risks, we got to do whatever it takes, just to kind of ground it in reality, to have a character, Jason Bateman's character, basically say, I believe in you, I'm happy we're doing this, but just so you know, people who do have more baggage, more accountability to the world around them, I'm risking more than you are.
Yeah.
And that's, I love you, and I'm excited for what we're doing, but
I must say,
my favorite line maybe in the whole movie is when he says, spoken like a guy who doesn't have a 7-year-old on Sundays.
I was done by that line. That line was great. That line was awesome.
Yes, dude.
That one scene,
such a good line.
Handed to any other actor, might have felt clunky.
God,
but he nailed it.
And just knowing that we all know it now, like the meta aspect, we all know that Jason is a brilliant director too now. Like we now think of him that way. Just the way he was using the filmmaking too, and all those long tracking, like everything just seemed like we were watching a handful of people at the top of their game, just playing inside a movie making world. Yeah, it's like with a relatable subject. Yeah. It's
playing people who are taking the ultimate fucking risk.
Dude.
Yeah.
Who is that I hear the whole police department?
I think that's me. That's me this time.
Okay. Jeff will be joining us from the penitentiary next week. Possibly the Rikers. I don't know what their internet's like.
So for those of you who have been following the trail, Ben and Matt contacted Michael Jordan and got a response. And Michael Jordan solidified a couple of things. One of the things he solidified was actually that he credits the basketball coach played by Marlon Wayans, George Raveling, who coached Michael. They mentioned this in the movie. Was it the Olympic team? Was it his first Olympic team? Or was it? Well, great. I
can't remember. I thought it was something below that. I didn't think it was the Olympic team. It was something else, but I'm not sure.
It credited him, and this is in the post-credit scene as well, with being an influence on this movie. So we only got the one scene. We will say the Martin Luther King scene, this is one of those moments where if you're writing fiction, that would really make a lot of people uncomfortable because it was fact and because it was truthful. You had to trust the creators. Yeah. And the Martin Luther King Jr. speech thing, that was all real. And even though it seemed, if it was not real, you would think it was manufactured by a couple white people to make this movie seem more important to a wider swath of the audience. This is true. And so this is one of those rare moments where it was like, oh, no, this is actually real. This is a real thing. And that's fabulous. But Michael Jordan, he said a couple other things, but he wasn't too, specific on the details. But he said, I want Viola Davis to play my mom. And the fact that he got her, and the fact that...
I want Viola Davis to play my mom.
Yeah, that's the first thought I said. Yeah. That's the first thought that I said. But as Ben and Matt, you're sitting there, he goes, well, we got to raise the budget a couple $1 million now? Yeah. But...
I don't know.
Knowing what we know, and we keep saying she underplayed it, but truly, that is a make or break role.
Yeah,
in this movie.
She didn't underplay that for a second. She played that exactly how it should have been played.
Like, fair enough.
And, I wanted to say this earlier. She is incredible all the time, but sometimes she ends up being cast in roles that demand so much of an emotional transparency that she is just constantly like teary-eyed and crying, which is incredible. Yeah, it was just so cool seeing her not do that with this. Like that she didn't want to seem. She was totally clear.
That percentage,
I love that. I love the writing of that scene. I've had a lot of practice at this, where he's like, "You're good at this. We're sitting here talking about me and not about your son. That you're good at this." She said, "I've had a lot of practice," but I just love that the actor was able to do something that I don't know, like we just don't get to see her play a lot of. Everyone wants to cast her in the big screaming, emotional, crying role nowadays.
I mean, doubt she had one scene.
That was not this.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm gonna remember this one.
Well, and also, it for people who have made movies and you have made more important movies than me, when you go through hair and makeup and you get up early and you get there and you do this whole thing and then your whole day, the entire day, is a phone call. And it's that negotiating where they're talking about the percentage, which is, this is it. This is the Jordan brand is not based on whether or not he gets the shoe or gets Nike, but it's whether or not it's his. It's whether or not he is a part of it. Not even just a partner, but when you say Air Jordan, you really mean this is Michael Jordan's shoe. It's his shoe line. He's not just creating it. He is a owner of it. It is his. And your job is to negotiate that over the phone. how do you not? How do you have the professionalism to do what she did in that scene? Because it's a long phone call.
Yeah,
it's a great scene.
It's a 2-minute phone call. That's a
Jeff,
long phone call.
Did you? I'm also talking about the acting work, but I didn't know that. Did you know that about the history of shoes and athletes and stuff? That this was the first time that it happened?
No, I didn't know this was the first time that happened, but I did know that they did offer it to Magic Johnson. That is true, because they were desperate to get him to not sign with Converse, who was about to blow up, and because Magic went to Converse for the next 5 or 10 years, because they already had Dr. J, they had the ABA, they had basically a lock on NBA, but once they got the Olympics, Converse was impossible to stop, but it was on its way out because people were getting injured. So that was something they talked about a little bit with the Adidas, is that the Converse was famously just like a hard rubber sole, and people were getting hurt. So that was like Adidas's pitch, is like, well, we're actually a better shoe. Yeah, exactly.
But okay, so I'm glad you didn't know either, because I certainly didn't know. Dave, I assume you didn't know about that either. So I liked that one of the first lines where she says, you know, it was such an obvious thing. I'm sure you just made a mistake by omitting it from the original contract.
Yeah.
Because it is like, to people like me, I was like, I didn't fucking know. I just assumed people always got a little bit of a cut. But then of course it made sense. This is the first time this has ever happened where they were building a shoe around an athlete.
No, I assumed that was the first time.
An athlete on a shoe roster.
I assumed that was the first time.
I thought that was cool. It was a fun, to
be honest, in your lifetime, they have.
Emotional way. What?
In your lifetime, that has been the case.
Exactly.
I assume they didn't, because, and they did a good job with this, none of the other athletes had their own shoe.
That's what I'm saying.
They were just,
It was so obvious that you can't pitch the idea of him having you're building it around him and not also.
Like I knew Julius Erving Dr. J didn't get a cut of Converse's sales. Like I knew that for sure. I didn't know whether or not Michael Jordan was the first, but I assumed he was I thought he was the first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being a child of the late 80s and 90s, it's just funny to imagine a world that wasn't like that, because you were always at, like, are those Grant Hills or those LeBrons or those MJs? Like, what? It changed everything with that whole sneaker game. And that first shoe, let's give it up, dude. I know that I am not a sneakerhead. I don't really, I don't really care about that stuff. But I love that you got to write that scene for the shoe designer to be like, how often do you guys think about basketball shoes?
Yeah.
Yes.
All the time.
I'm glad they gave it to him, because of course you want to believe that somebody cares that much about this shoe design if they're going to help be a part of this thing. That first shoe is sick, dude. And I did not know that fact about, fuck it, we'll pay the fines.
I didn't know that either.
Let's create an entire mindset
did you guys do the math?
Around individualism with these athletes and branding. Very effective.
Did you guys do the math?
For how many games? I don't even know how many games are in a season, dude. How many games are in a season?
82 times 5,000 is 400.
400, yeah, wow.
And 8,000, which is almost twice as much as he was offered.
Which, of course, is just a little drop in the water.
We know that now.
Got again.
But how about this? Yeah. Do you know what worked surprisingly well for me? And this is just the true story. This is just like one of those Mark Twain, one of the best quotes of all time. Truth is always stranger than fiction. Fiction has to make sense.
Right.
The fact that Pete having a speech impediment, this is one of those things where it's Pete, right? The fact that, and it turns out Michael Jordan, of course, loves this person, played golf with him later in his life, but it's like the work is the most important thing from the most competitive person of all time. So the fact that he has a speech impediment makes it's more endearing. I'm sorry, it just is. The fact that it's like, I will do whatever it takes to make this shoe to you. The way you don't have to pepper it, you don't have to season it, you don't have to make it. You know what I mean? The fact that somebody with speech issues, let's say it, says that to Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan was like, I want this guy making my shoes, I think it's fucking great. I think it's really, I think it's a great legacy.
It's also, I don't want to open this up too much, but Jeff, you're a big sports fan. Tell me if you thought about this at all. Who would Michael Jordan be if this hadn't happened? A whole company and corporation saying, we think you're going to change the world too, and we're going to change the entire industry that from our perspective as well. Every single thing that happened because of this deal changed all the rules. Everybody was thinking outside the box. All the contracts were shifted. All of the shoes changed after the fact. And he was hoisted up because of it. I would imagine. I didn't watch the early 90s Bulls live. I didn't watch.
It was 10 years after he joined the league. He didn't win for 9 years or something.
Yeah, I know a lot of 80s. He wasn't really bringing it. But I mean, I don't know. It just made me wonder, like.
He did. He was on his own, basically.
How many elements had to come together for him to become who he was? All these speeches are so great in the movie about, I think your son's going to change the world. Viola thinks it. And that she says, and that I can't remember the exact line, but basically she's like, what you think he's going to do, what I think he's going to do, what Michael knows he's going to do.
Yeah.
That's all wonderful talk. But man, there's no way it didn't have an effect that he was like, everybody thinks that as well. They're putting all their chips on me.
Yeah.
I'm getting all that attention. I would imagine the cameras were pointed at his feet for some of those early games when they were like, he's wearing those shoes again, folks.
Oh, that rule was going to change in a second. That was the dumbest fucking rule.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah. What a dumb rule.
Any other performances or moments we want to call out?
Chris Messina,
I think clearly we enjoyed this
Chris
movie.
Messina did 2 days of film. I don't know, but he seemed like he did 3 days of filming. But as Michael Jordan's agent, spot on.
Yeah.
Just fucking awesome.
All right.
Is he a famous person, Jeff? Is that like a famous sports agent? Surely he is.
Yes.
I just never heard of him.
Yes. Well, they said at the end he ended up selling his company for 6 figures. 6 figures?
He was spotted eating alone that night.
Nine figures. $100 million.
9. Yeah.
9 figures. $100 million.
Yeah. The one counts.
I don't know what his company was, but he was absorbed by one of the bigger companies, of course. Yes, he's a famous person.
I enjoyed, just for informational purposes, the postscript wrap-ups, because I just didn't know.
I enjoyed that as well. Yeah.
So that was endearing as well. I liked that.
There was nothing about this movie that didn't that sucked at all. Like everything was done absolutely perfectly.
Really, really great.
Right down to the clips of him in the credits. Everybody got up to leave and they all stopped. My whole theater stopped. Yeah. My whole theater stopped standing and watched.
I sat in a different chair. I started leaving and then I was like, wait, I want to watch. The only thing that I wish they did and this is, again, if they had the TV series version of this, or we can do now on our own, which isn't part of the legacy of this movie, is we don't have Derek Jeter or Tiger Woods. If this happens, this is what they did. They said, we did this to Michael Jordan. We will do this to you. We don't have a baseball department. Derek Jeter, you are the future of baseball. Here, we'll create a cleat. We'll create a shoe. Derek Jeter's a Nike athlete. Tiger Woods with golf. I just watched golf today because of the Masters. Shout out. John Rahm. Congratulations. Brooks Koepka's wearing Nike. Rory didn't make the cut. Rory McIlroy is the biggest golfer in the world right now. He's wearing Nike. Tiger Woods was Nike. He was the only Nike golf athlete. And who were the first 2 billionaire athletes? Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods. They didn't show that in the trailer. But
I have worked. This is my last comment. I'll shut the fuck up. I was like, some catering side hustling jobs in New York when I was still living there. And one of my favorite gigs that I would work sometimes was at the Nike Corps in New York City. And when you walk in, on the wall to the left, I believe, is like 100 by 100 foot photo of Jordan in the giant from the free throw line dunk contest.
You walk through the door,
they know. Yeah, no, they know. They're like, this is our entire fucking company is built on what we did with this guy. Like
the fact that
the logo that was awesome. The drawing,
that dunk contest happened after they named the company Air Jordan. Can you imagine having that foresight?
Yeah.
You called it Air Jordan after he dunked from, or before he dunked from the foul line, because of a cutout.
They just knew.
Sorry,
I just want Jeff. I want to ask you just one more time. Like, get me inside the head of somebody like Sonny Vaccaro, because I bet you have done this with sports and stuff. I felt like a little bit of an outsider, and I needed help with the filmmaking to be brought in. When he was watching that clip of Jordan getting past the Carolina game and taking the shot, he saw something in there that I did not see. Is that how sports people look at athletes and sports? Like, did you feel like that was super authentic to people who are obsessed with watching sports?
I have a friend that used to do this for baseball, where he would have to watch and analyze like every pitch of a baseball game. Yes, but this stuff, they didn't do this as much back then. It was all on VHS tape. But yes, you used to have to come up with reels and tapes and send to people. But yeah, because everything was very strict back then. So the fact that Michael Jordan, because I didn't catch it for a while, I was like, why do they keep showing this over and over again? The fact that he was a decoy was not something that was done back then. Even in football, you didn't have decoys back then because you just ran the ball. So the fact that he was just being casual and then stood back and was wide open as a decoy, everything was you ran to your spot. You did this. Rarely did you just linger, because that comes from like street ball. That comes from like playing more casual sports. But the disciplined sport was always very particular. It was very meticulous. So yes, that is probably entirely accurate. I imagine that scene was very accurate, and he probably would have referenced that at the pitch. I bet you at the pitch he would have said, "I see you."
That really pulled me in, dude. That made me think differently about how people look at sports when he broke, because I still wasn't even totally sure until he was breaking it down for Jason Bateman.
A disciplined athlete would have been like fucking Pleasantville. You run to your spot and you wait. You never are casual. Like he almost looked like he was dancing.
Yeah, he was like, look at how excited he is to get the ball back. Calm as a cucumber, change his life. Like I would never have seen that.
This was in the short shorts, high socks, very disciplined. That's why the ABA in the NBA, the merger took years, because the ABA was a little looser because they felt like an inferior brand, but they were like, we'll have higher talent, less discipline. And yeah,
I'm gonna stop Jeff there, because this will be in our special sports podcast.
We don't have a Patreon.
We don't fucking do.
Fun stuff. Go see this movie. Enjoy yourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
You're welcome.
Do not miss this movie. Go and see this movie.
Yeah, go enjoy yourself.
It'll be the best thing you do all week.
All right.
Let's wrap it up, man.
Jeff. I should hit that button.
I can't wait to listen back tomorrow and figure out what the point was I was trying to make earlier that I forgot about. But it was right when my beer hit, because we recorded our episode, but hopefully I covered it at some point. This is our part of the episode where we tell you what we've been watching in our segment, What You've Been Watching, give you our recommendations for the week. We love to start with Dave. Dave!
I'm still pushing through Mandalorian and Picard. Both worth a look if you're waiting. It's almost over, so maybe start watching them now so nobody panic cancels the fucking things. And also I'm still doing the rewatch of all the Marvel movies, and this week I had the pleasure of rewatching Thor 2: The Dark World.
Your favorite movie.
I actually enjoyed this. I enjoyed it. It's not as bad as I remember. Okay, shut the fuck up.
All right.
That's for you.
Yeah. It's happening.
This is one of our lowest buzz counts ever.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it, and I'm on to Winter Soldier now, which is the one I went and saw in the movies and hated, that everybody else loved. But I was in the wrong frame of mind when I was watching that.
Yeah, that's a good one, man.
John?
I watched for finally my golf. I'm on a thread with Jeff and a couple other guys for our golf buddies, and I've resisted for no real personal reason. I just haven't had time. Finally got to sit down and watch Full Swing, the Netflix docuseries on professional golfers. It was great. I enjoyed it a lot. And then I didn't mention it last week, but I did want to call it out. I rewatched one of my favorite Darren Aronofsky movies, The Fountain. Very emotional, really powerful.
We watched that together.
Watched it with my girlfriend. Yeah. Wonderful stuff. Love it. Jeff?
Well, I watched Super Mario Brothers. You got to listen to Matt and Mark. We all watched Reefer Madness. So you got to have to go ahead and listen to that when it comes out in a week and a half on 420. I'm catching up on Ted Lasso, and I'm liking it. It's fun and cheesy, but in a good, really amazing, brilliant way. And episode 4,
that is that show, right?
Yeah.
I think
there are a couple things. So I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cheesy. And then I said this to my family. I was like, I don't really laugh out loud when I watch the show. And within seconds, I had laughed out loud like 3 times. And they kept saying like, oh, you don't laugh out loud? So kudos to Ted. Happy. But this is the season. 'Tis the season. I'm caught up on Mandalorian, by the way. And I'm going to say this. I've actually liked this the past couple episodes. The last episode has gotten heat online of The Mandalorian, and I've liked it.
I don't know why. It was a buddy cop movie. It was awesome. This
is what I thought Mandalorian was. It was issue of the week, figure out who done it, and then Mando learns a little bit about himself moving forward. I thought that's what the whole thing was. Matt and Mark are going to complain about it tomorrow, so I can't wait to hear them. And I feel like I saw something else, but maybe not. Ted Lasso. All right.
Groovy. Thank you, film fans.
Until next time.